Dear participants, today we will discuss one of the most important approaches in strategic management, namely prescriptive approach to strategic management. This approach views strategy as a rational, systematic, and planned process in which organizations first define objectives and then develop strategies to achieve them. This lecture will explain the strategic management process, the major theories associated with the prescriptive model of strategic management, practical examples, and criticisms of this approach. By the end of this lecture, learners should understand how organizations formulate and implement strategies using a structured decision-making process. Let us begin by understanding the concept of strategic management. Strategic management refers to the process through which organizations formulate, implement, and evaluate decisions that enable them to achieve long-term objectives. In simple words, strategic management helps any organization determine where it wants to go and how will it reach there. Strategic management is the pattern of major objectives and essential policies designed to achieve those objectives. This definition emphasizes three important elements: objectives which organizations want to accomplish. There is also a role of policies, as policies provide guidelines for decision making and action. And third important component of strategic management definition is organizational identity. A strategy defines the business in which the organization operates and the type of organization it intends to become, and that leads to the organizational identity. For example, if a company decides to become the market leader in electric vehicles, all strategic decisions regarding technology, production, marketing, and investment will be aligned with that objective. Thus, strategy provides direction and identity to the organization. The prescriptive approach assumes that strategic decisions are made logically and systematically. Before taking action, managers clearly identify organizational objectives and then design strategies to achieve those objectives. This diagram illustrates the prescriptive strategic management process. The process begins with three important elements: environment, resources, and purpose. Managers analyze external opportunities and threats present in the environment. Simultaneously, they examine internal resources and capabilities. And after analysis, several strategic options are generated. These alternatives are evaluated carefully, and the most suitable option is selected, which becomes the choice of the organization. And finally, the chosen strategy is implemented. The key message of this model is that analysis comes before decision making and implementation follows a strategic choice. This sequential nature distinguishes prescriptive strategy for more flexible or emergent approaches. The prescriptive approach is built around three major stages: analysis, strategic choice, and implementation. About analysis, marketers or the managers, they study markets, competitors, they explore customers, technology, economic conditions, and the organizational resources available to them. The purpose is to understand the current situation, and this is how they analyze the present resources or the situation. The second stage is the strategic choice. Different strategic alternatives are generated and evaluated. Managers compare the advantages and disadvantages of each option. The strategy which best meets organizational objective is selected. And this is how they make the strategic choice. The third stage of the prescriptive approach is implementation. The plans are translated into action. Resources are allocated, employees are assigned responsibilities, and performance is monitored. Without effective implementation, even the best strategy may fail. Therefore, successful strategic management requires all these three stages to work together. The prescriptive process begins with environmental and resource analysis. Managers ask important questions such as what opportunities exist, what threats are emerging, what resources do we possess, and what capabilities make us unique. Based on this analysis, strategic objectives are established. The process provides several benefits. This process provides clear direction as everyone understands the organizational goals. This process also aligns resources, and resources are allocated as per priorities. This process also leads to competitive advantage because organizations can identify ways to outperform competitors. There is effective monitoring, and progress can be measured against predetermined objectives. And thus, as a result, organizations become more focused and coordinated. Several principles guide prescriptive strategy. First principle is objective-based management. Here, the organizations must have a clear purpose. Then there is environmental awareness. Strategies should be based on external opportunities and threats. There should be resource consideration, where internal strengths and weaknesses must be understood. There should be strategic flexibility, where objectives may need modification, so they could be modified whenever such circumstances arise. There could be monitoring and control, so the performance could be continuously reviewed. An important characteristic of the prescriptive approach is the existence of a clearly defined primary objective, as this objective guides decision making throughout the organization. To understand the process practically, let us examine the example of a cereal partners. Cereal partners sought growth in the European breakfast cereal market. The company followed a structured strategic process where they followed the steps of market analysis, objective setting, strategic option development, selecting a strategy, and finally implementation. So the primary objective was profit maximization and increasing shareholder returns. This company carefully analyzed opportunities across different European countries before making strategic decisions. This example demonstrates how organizations systematically move from analysis to implementation. So the first step was market analysis. Managers investigated the European breakfast cereal industry and asked a few questions to themselves: that which countries offer growth opportunities? Where is demand increasing? Who are their major competitors? And also, what consumer trends are emerging? Market analysis helps organizations understand where opportunity exists and where resources should be invested. Without proper analysis, strategic decisions may be based on assumptions rather than evidence. Therefore, environmental scanning is a critical component of prescriptive strategy. After market analysis, the organization established a clear objective. The objective was profit maximization and shareholder value creation. Objectives are important because they provide direction and help managers evaluate alternatives. A clear objective answers this question, that what are we trying to achieve? Examples of strategic objectives include market leadership, revenue growth, international expansion, innovation, leadership, customer satisfaction. In the prescriptive approach, objectives guide every subsequent strategic decisions. Once objectives are established, managers identify strategic alternatives. For serial partners, possible options included selecting target customer groups, entering specific countries, expanding product ranges, and using different brand names. So, generating multiple alternatives is also important because organizations rarely have one strategic choice. Managers compare alternatives to determine which option best supports organization objectives. A wider range of options increases the likelihood of identifying an effective strategy. The next stage is selecting the most appropriate strategy. Managers evaluate alternatives using criteria such as profitability, feasibility, competitive advantage, resource requirements, and risk levels. The selected strategy should provide the strongest competitive position. This stage represents the core decision-making component of strategic management. Choosing the wrong strategy can waste resources and reduce competitiveness. Therefore, careful evaluation is essential. In the cereal partners example, the company acquired shredded wheat in the United Kingdom. New products were introduced in Spain and Portugal. Then comes the implementation stage. Implementation may involve organizational restructuring, resource allocation, employee training, marketing activities, performance monitoring. So these all may sometimes changes, sometimes modifications, sometimes the present circumstances, they all may support in the implementation of the strategic choice. Many strategies fail not because they are poorly designed, but because they are poorly implemented. So it should be made sure that the conditions which are required for an effective implementation of a strategic choice is present. And hence, implementation is as important as planning. Several theories support the prescriptive approach of strategic management. These theories include industry and environment-based theories, resource-based theories, game-based theories, cooperation and network-based theories. Each theory focuses on a different aspect of strategy formulation. Together, these theories provide a comprehensive understanding of how organizations create competitive advantage. So let us discuss each theory individually. Let us begin with industry and environment-based theories of strategy. Industry and environment-based theories argue that profitability depends on selecting attractive industries and securing a strong competitive position. For some companies, profitability is the clear goal, and the content of the corporate strategy therefore addresses this objective. Over the long term, this is likely to override all other objectives. This profit is delivered by selecting and then competing in an industry. Such theories are commonly called environment-based theories of strategy. Importantly, the word environment here is not used in the sense of green or sustainability, but it means the external factors acting on the organization, markets, competitors, governments, etc. The figure displayed in the PowerPoint presentation shows where the emphasis lies within the context of prescriptive strategy. Such concepts derive from the assertion that organizations are rational, logical, and driven by the need for profitability. This prescriptive strategy is strongly associated with the work of Michael Porter. According to this theory, external factors are also extremely important. Managers should analyze industry structure, competitive rivalry, supplier power, buyer power, threat of substitutes, and threats of new entrants. Organizations operating in attractive industries generally enjoy better opportunities for profitability. Thus, strategy begins with understanding the external environment. Within the prescriptive process, industry-based theories are mainly concerned with environmental analysis. The focus is on identifying opportunities and threats. The assumption is that external conditions largely determine organizational success, and managers therefore devote significant attention to competitor analysis and market conditions before making strategic choices. This approach of industry and environment based theories of strategy highlights the importance of strategic positioning. In prescriptive process, resource based theories are also emphasizing on another aspect, that is resource analysis and capability assessment. Managers ask questions that what resources do we possess? Which capabilities differentiate us from competitors? The answers help determine which strategic options are realistic and sustainable. Resource-based theories focus on internal strengths rather than external conditions. According to this prescriptive, sustainable competitive advantage is achieved from valuable organizational resources and capabilities. Examples include skilled employees, strong brands, patents, advanced technology, and organizational knowledge. Competitors may copy products, but unique resources are often. Another theory that falls under the prescriptive approach of strategic management is game theory. Game theory of strategy introduces a different perspective. It recognizes that organizations do not operate in isolation. Competitors react to decisions which are strategically made. Therefore, managers must consider how rivals are likely to respond. For example, if one airline reduces prices, competitors may also reduce prices. If one company launches a new technology, rivals may accelerate innovation. Game theory explores the interaction between an organization and others as the decision is made. And it helps managers anticipate competitive behavior. And that's the game. And that is why it is called as game theory of a strategy. Game-based theories are mainly concerned with strategic choice. The focus is on predicting competitor reactions before selecting a strategy. Managers evaluate not only their own actions, but also the likely responses of competitors. This prescriptive approach improves strategic decision making in highly competitive markets. Not all competitive advantage comes from competition. Sometimes organizations benefit through cooperation as well. So, the cooperative strategies involve partnerships between independent organizations to achieve shared objectives. In a cooperative strategy, at least two companies work together to achieve an agreed objective. Such theories have arisen in recent times as a result of the realization that organizations can deliver better value to customers and create better competitive advantage over rivals by cooperating with other companies. Examples include strategic alliances, joint ventures, research collaborations. Network theory emphasizes relationships, information sharing, influence, and connections. Organizations can gain access to resources and opportunities through strong networks. So, this is what cooperation theory focuses upon. Although prescriptive strategy has many advantages, it has also been criticized. The most famous critic is Henry Mintzberg. Mintzberg argued that prescriptive strategy relies on unrealistic assumptions. According to him, the environment is predictable, managers behave rationally, implementation proceeds smoothly. So, these are some of the unrealistic assumptions. In reality, organizations face uncertainty, politics, resistance to change, and unexpected events. Consequently, actual strategies often differ from planned strategies. And by the time strategies are implemented, there could be some changes in the environment or within the organization or among the managers, because of which the actual strategy may not be implemented and which may differ from planned strategy. Now, let us summarize today's lecture. Strategic management from a prescriptive approach is a rational and systematic process. Organizations establish objectives. Organizations analyze environments and resources. They evaluate strategic alternatives. Organizations also select the best option and then implement those best options and monitor the performance of the organization. Industry conditions, resources, competitor behavior, and collaborative relationships all influence strategic decisions. So, the approach is particularly useful in relatively stable environments where future conditions can be predicted with reasonable confidence. But where situations are unpredictable, where situations may not remain the same in short term, there this approach may not be useful. Despite criticisms, the prescriptive approach remains one of the foundational frameworks of strategic management and continues to influence strategic planning practices around the world. In the next lecture, we will discuss emergent approach of strategic management. Thank you.